Now I'm ready to sew a seam on my project. My machine is already set for the straight stitch, which we can see on our screen, and I also see an icon that looks like a presser foot with the letter A on it. That's our all-purpose foot, which is already on the machine. When I go to my needle plate, I see all of these lines and measurement markings, such as 3/8 and 5/8. 5/8 is a very common seam allowance, so I'm going to line up my fabric with that line. Lower the presser foot, and sew forward a few stitches, and then press and hold the reverse button to sew backwards a few stitches. And release the button and continue sewing. When you reach the end of your fabric, press and hold the reverse button to sew backwards a few stitches. And now press your automatic thread trimmer. Raise your presser foot. And here's our lovely seam. I did a reverse stitch at the beginning and end to make sure that the seam doesn't unravel. Now let's work on some other stitches. Before we start sewing a new stitch, let's take a look at the front panel of our machine. On the front we have some function buttons, and on the side we have some of our most commonly used utility stitches. Whenever I press them, the stitch changes and we can see an illustration of the stitch as well as what presser foot to use. I'm going to go back to the center straight stitch, and on my screen I see these two black boxes. One has a zigzag and some straight lines, and one looks like a double helix. I'm going to press the button under the one that has the zigzag, and what that will do when I'm in straight stitch mode is change my stitch length or change my needle position. Right here I see the icon of a needle with some arrows, so if I move the arrow so the number is bigger, my needle moves to the right. And if I make the number smaller, the needle moves to the left. When I'm back at the default setting, a black box will show up on my numbers. And I can also change stitch length. To get out of this menu, press the button under this little clear arrow. This double helix is my tension, so if I press the button under that icon, I can adjust my tension. And I might want to do that for using specialty threads or techniques. If I raise my tension quite a bit and I want to get it back to auto, just press the button under auto and it's back to the default. I'm going to go back to the main screen, so I'm going to press this button under the arrow. Now I want to select a stitch that's on my lid. I see on my lid I have a couple of icons, one that looks like a straight stitch and a zigzag, and one that looks like a scallop stitch and ABC. Right now we're going to focus on the continuous stitches, which are the ones with the straight stitch and zigzag. And I want to do stitch number 50, which looks really pretty. I'm going to come back down to my function buttons and press the button that matches that zigzag straight stitch icon. And I will see stitches 1 to 5. Press your scroll button, and I'll start going up the number of stitches. Keep scrolling until you see the stitch you want. Here's number 50, and I'm going to press the button under that stitch. Now I see it selected on my screen, and it tells me I need to change my presser foot to the B foot. Before we sew our stitch, we need to change the presser foot. Behind the presser foot is a little black button, so push it and the presser foot comes off. I need to use the B foot, so I'm going to put that under this area, and I'm going to lower the presser foot lifter. And I'll hear it snap into place. Move the thread under the presser foot, and we're ready to start getting our fabric. So I have it here. Place it under the presser foot, lower it, and begin sewing. Once I reach the end of my fabric, I'm going to press the automatic thread trimmer and raise the presser foot. And there's my stitch. Now I'm going to come back to my screen and press the function button under the icon that looks like a zigzag. Now I can change my stitch width and stitch length. First, I'm going to narrow my stitch width, and I'm going to set it to number 4. Let's try that one out. Put your fabric under the presser foot, lower it, and begin sewing. Stop sewing when you reach the end of your fabric and press your automatic thread trimmer. Raise your presser foot and remove the fabric. Now I want to change the stitch length of the stitch. So I'm going to set my stitch width back to default, which I can see when the black goes behind the 7.0. And I want to lower my stitch length. So let's make it 1.8. Let's try that out. Put the fabric under the presser foot, lower it, and begin sewing. Stop sewing at the end of your fabric and press the automatic thread trimmer, and raise the presser foot. And here's our stitch out, showing the default stitch, the stitch where we made it more narrow, and the stitch where we shortened the stitch length. Now let's check out our programmable stitches. To view my programmable stitches, I'm going to come up to the lid and go to the icon that looks like a scallop stitch and ABC. And there I can see all of my programmable stitches. To select that mode, go down to the function buttons and press the one that looks like a scallop stitch and ABC. And now I see some of those stitches. I also see a presser foot icon with the letter B, which means I need to use my satin stitch foot. If I press that ABC button again, I see my alphabet stitches. And every time I press this button, I can scroll through one of my 5 alphabets. I want to stitch out Val Sews because my name is Val and I like sewing. But I also want to add some hearts in it because I really like sewing. So I see that I'm in my programmable decorative stitches, and I'm going to scroll through until I see stitch 18, which is this heart. Press the button, and we see it on our screen. Now I'm going to come back down to the ABC button, and I'm going to scroll through these letters using the scroll button. Here I see V, so I'm going to select V, scroll back for A, and scroll again for L. But now I need to put a space in it. So I'm going to continue to scroll past my lowercase letters and past my numbers until I see this one that looks like a box. That box is a space. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to keep going forward and select the letter S. Then scroll back for E, scroll for W, and back to S. I want another heart at the end, so I'm going to press that ABC button and go through my alphabets until I'm back to the programmable decorative stitches. I'm going to scroll again, so I'm on stitch 18, the other heart, select it, and I only want the sequence to stitch out once. So back on my function buttons, there's this button that looks like a little bullseye. I'm going to press that, and that will make my machine stop sewing after the sequence. Let's see what this looks like. I'm going to take my fabric and put it under the presser foot, lower it, and begin sewing. The machine will stop sewing after the sequence, and then I'll press the automatic thread trimmer and raise the presser foot. And that's what my sequence looks like. And after I trim all those thread tails, it looks like this. Now I want to change my stitch sequence from Val Sews to Valerie Sews. I'm going to come back to my screen, and I'm going to push this button right here to bring me back to the beginning of my sequence so I can see it more easily. I'm going to scroll with this small arrow button, And whenever you insert characters, you want the highlight to be on whatever character is to the right of where you want to add it. And I'll show you. So I'm going to press the ABC button and scroll. Actually, I don't need to scroll. There's my letter E. So E, and we see it's inserted. I'm going to scroll to R, add that, I, and back to E. Now the stitch sequence is ready to sew. Now let's stitch it out. Press the automatic thread trimmer, raise the presser foot, and here's our new sequence. Now let's check out elongation stitches.